In today's episode, we'll be covering basic number mathematics as well as string math. So now that we know how we can get information from the computer to help aid us in the software development process, we need to know some of the actions that the computer intuitively knows how to do without us telling it. On a basic level, the computer already knows how to do basic math arithmetic. This includes addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division, all of which are represented by the symbols shown on your screen now. In any IDE that you may install, you'll be able to print out the answer to simple math problems, which may seem counterintuitive if you have a calculator app on your phone, but you have to remember that computers are dumb, and anything we want a computer to do, we have to build up from scratch. Basic arithmetic, while simple, helps out in almost any program you may write. For example, if you wanted to build a basic calculator app, we'd need to utilize this functionality in order to correctly display the answer when our user tries to add, subtract, multiply, or divide two numbers. In addition to the four basic math equations, most programming languages also include an additional operator known as modulus. If this is your first time hearing this word, don't worry, since it's not usually taught in math classes. Modulus allows us to get the remainder of a divisional operation. For example, when we take 6 modulus 50, we are essentially telling the computer to take 50, divide it by 6, ignore the actual answer, and just give us the remainder of that operation, in this case 2. Since when we divide 50 by 6, the remainder is 2. If there is no remainder, say in the case that we take 2 modulus 50, since the remainder is 0, the function would return 0 if we were to print it out. This can be extremely useful in many cases, the most obvious being if we want to determine whether or not a certain integer is even or odd. If we take 2 modulus a certain number and it returns 0, then we know it's even, since any even number divided by 2 will always result in a full answer. But if the system returns 1, then we know that the integer is odd. Not only can our computers work with numbers, but also strings. In the last episode, we talked about printing strings to the console, but let's say we're making a game and we wanted to print out the statement, "Game over, 4 was your final score." Now, while you are able to print out numbers encased in a string, such as if we were to do print 4, in some cases it would be more useful to print out the actual integer value, especially in the case of a game where the score can change every time. Well, we're also able to print multiple strings of text and even integers by adding them together in the print state. Continuing with our score example, if we wanted to print out that statement, using 4 as an integer rather than a string, we could do this by breaking down the statement into 2 strings and an integer like so. We of course begin with the print statement, which again will be different across all languages. Inside the print statement, we start off by printing the string "game over." Here comes the important part. From there, we use a plus sign to add 4 as an integer to the print statement, just like if you were adding 2 numbers. Then we can repeat this process for the final string, "was your final score," and we're able to print out the entirety of our statement easily. We could also combine the 2 lessons we've learned thus far and do something like "game over, 4 plus 4 was your final score." In the case, let's say, where we have a game which gives you a base score and then 4 points for every enemy you kill. This process would look exactly the same, although you just have to make sure you use parentheses to ensure nothing gets messed up. Now, it's important to note that the computer will take whatever you put in the parentheses and print it out character for character. So oftentimes, programmers will forget to add a space when you need it, so it's good practice to always put a space after and before your strings to make sure that the string is printed out like you want it. Another important thing to notice is the difference between 4 and 4, or more overarchingly, the difference between a number encased in parentheses and a number that is just represented by an integer value. In this case, the 4 surrounded by parentheses is treated as a string, rather than a 4, which is treated as a number without parentheses. This may not seem like a big deal, but again, computers are dumb, and if you try to do math with the 4 surrounded by parentheses, it will result in an error, because the computer doesn't understand that that 4 is a number, and therefore it's treating it like a string. So when you are a program, just make sure to make a mental note of whether or not you want to make something an integer or a string. Next time, we'll finally start talking about variables and how, why, and when we use them. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing. To the left, you can see our last video on the console and how we use it and why it's useful. If you'd like to see the whole series, the playlist is linked to the right. Thank you for watching.